the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert, Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disruptive: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance. This is your chance where I sit down with today's top experts in business, mindset, wellness, and success to help you master disruption and thrive.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
He's the president and founder of DialogueWorks LC, a seasoned consultant in leadership, change management, dialogue, critical thinking, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence. He's worked with a wide range of national and international clients, including major companies like Cox Communication, Lockheed Martin, AT&T, and many others. He's also the acclaimed author of Overcoming Fake Talk, Creating Real Conversations that Build Relationships, Create Respect, and Get Results. Welcome to the podcast, John Stoker.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh my gosh. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation about conversations because I feel like the last 3 years have been so disruptive and all of our emotional intelligence has sort of walked out the door in the process. I want to start with that topic, one of my favorite topics, on how can we use emotional intelligence to be people savvy and thrive?
That's a great question. I think the challenge is, the first kind of element of emotional intelligence is understanding yourself. So if you don't know what's going on with you, it's certainly difficult, if not impossible, to connect with another person. So
Right.
when it comes to emotional intelligence, to be able to recognize when your feelings are being disruptive or causing chaos, if you want, in your own thinking process, you have to be able to recognize that that's happening to be able to quiet it.
Right.
And if you can't, then it's pretty hard to kind of put yourself out there for and in behalf of the other person. So I would say the first step is for a person to ask themselves, what's going on with me? And they could do that very easily by using kind of a sentence stem by just saying, what am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling really angry. And then what? I'm angry because, and then finish the sentence, because there's always thinking that's going on in our head, often subconsciously for us, that we don't recognize is driving the emotion. And so a person who's highly emotional, who's feeling anger or frustration, what they really want to do is be able to recognize their own feeling and understand what's behind it. And once you understand what's behind it, it's really easy to say, is that absolutely true or is that accurate? And most of the time we have to say, nah, not really. I'm making that up. And that has the effect of releasing or calming or diminishing the emotion that a person may feel. So that's kind of a long answer, but I would think that that's probably the first step to kind of establishing connection and rapport with somebody.
Yeah. So knowing yourself is really the first step to being able to talk with others, because if you are a leader, you don't want to lead with flying off the handle and just responding and reacting rather than responding to the stimulus. So tuning into those self-reflective questions, like, what am I feeling? Is this really true? It takes a little work, but we can learn new tricks, can't we?
Yes, we can. In fact, that happened to me yesterday. We have a dog, and my wife took him up the mountains for a run and lost the keys to her car.
Oh no.
and she didn't take her cell phone with her, and she had to borrow one from a construction worker to call me, tell me what was going on, and what was I feeling in that instance?
Yeah.
I was
Anger, maybe.
frustration, like, oh my gosh.
Well,
So,
it's so good that you are vulnerable and sharing your. Well, thank you for sharing that you're actually a real person and we all have emotions, and that you first listened to yourself and tapped into the emotions and the empathy piece. Probably it's good to be empathetic to yourself. Like, what am I feeling? And almost anyone would feel that way in this circumstance, correct?
yes, but I had to kind of get control of that to be rational and think about what do I need to do to help improve the situation, rather
Yeah.
than just sitting there and seething and being just totally frustrated.
Yeah, I found that in relationships too, where if you're only focused on the problem, then you're not focused on the solution. And I'm just impressed that she actually knew your phone number and didn't just have it plugged in. So that's impressive to me. And you could solve the problem once you could emotionally realize that reacting isn't as good as responding. So, what can we teach our audience on how to become better at connection and establishing rapport?
Well, I think a simple answer to that would be I think we do far too much telling. And that telling is based on what it is that we're thinking. So, whatever that is, I guess we think that we need to make our point or give direction or, correction without really stopping and realizing that we may not know what we think we know. And so, if people could just shift out of that, I almost want to say arrogance. There's kind of a, it's almost there's a conflict of arrogance where when we think we know everything that we know because we know it, or that's the way we think, we miss the opportunity to be curious and engage in discovery. And obviously, the way to engage in discovery is to ask questions. So even if it's just to say, well, tell me what happened. Why do you think it happened that way? If you were looking at doing something differently, what do you think you'd do differently? What were you hoping as an outcome? I mean, asking all those kind of questions allows the other person to think rather than defend themselves. And I think goes a long, long way to communicating to them that you're interested in understanding and making sure that you're clear about what you're thinking. And I don't know about you, but I've found is that I've done that. I've found that I've heard and learned some things that I had never even considered, which told me that my thinking was incomplete or inaccurate in terms of the situation. So I think one of the easiest ways to establish rapport and connection is to ask questions and think about what people are saying. And often in doing that, the other questions will emerge. We'll find ourselves thinking, well, whoa, what was that? Tell me more about that, or tell me more about that. And then you're off to the races. And the person feels safe and respected, and they're more likely to answer truthfully and honestly and even be vulnerable. So I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like everybody wants to be heard. And we're in this age right now where so many people are unhappy with work, they're disengaged, they're quiet quitting, they're loud quitting. And basically, if they felt heard and you repeated back what they said, then they might help you if you have that open mindset rather than the fixed mindset to understand how they feel and then offer a possible solution or outcome. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. I agree with that. Totally.
I know this because I've done it all wrong, and I've been in relationships many times where people are mansplaining at me about their way, their way, their way, and that's not a good way to elicit a good response from me. I feel like if somebody could just take the time to tune in to their feelings and find out if it's true, then repeat back what they heard. I'll feel heard, and they will have bought themselves some time to cool off and respond with ability instead of like that angry mansplaining.
Well, and you just summarized a really great skill, and that is you can summarize via a question, by saying something like, so if I've understood correctly, you thought whatever, and I thought, am I understanding that correctly? So notice I'm summarizing kind of the interaction, my own understanding as a question, and giving the other person the opportunity to say, yeah, that's it. No, you kind of missed this part. Well, tell me more about that. And then you're continuing to be off to the races where you're gaining understanding and learning from
Well,
that.
I'm excited to have your expertise on this topic. I'm passionate about this topic, and I just told you why. Because it's not easy to do. It sounds simple, but it's definitely not easy. And yet, we all need to establish connection and rapport and talk to anyone, anytime about anything. So, how can we do so?
Usually, I find that people struggle when it comes to sharing tough topics or what is often referred to as difficult conversations. So, in my book, if I can mention it, I developed a 4-step process for holding, any kind of a difficult conversation. And I found through my research that most of the time people avoid holding those conversations because they don't exactly know how to do it. So if they don't know how to do it, they're going to avoid it, or they'll attempt it, but then they don't hold it well and it doesn't go well. And then that kind of becomes the evidence for not holding the conversation the next time around. So this simple 4-step process is called initiate, discover, connect, and build. So in initiate, we just start the conversation. It's just like, well, how do I begin? And I begin by sharing what we call an attention check, where I get the attention of my listener. So it would sound like this. Wow, I'd like to talk about something that's really important to how we work together. Can we talk? And we ask a question because it creates engagement. And then you share data and your thinking. So the data might be, the last 2 Fridays when you usually give me my report at 9 o'clock, I haven't gotten the report. Today it was like 10:15, and last week it was 10 o'clock. I'm thinking there's something going on that I'm not aware of. So that's the data and the interpretation. And then we go to discovery, asking questions. Tell me what's going on, what's happening. And maybe the other person says, well, to be honest, I come in early to work on your report, and the last 2 Fridays, the VP has saw me at my desk. He came over and gave me some of his work to do. And I didn't really feel comfortable saying, no, I can't do that. So I did it, which means I didn't get to your report. Now, if I want to ask other questions, I can. I could say, so it's not that you can't do it. It's not that I haven't given you what you need. None of that. It's just that you don't want to say no to the VP. Yeah, that's it. And then I might summarize. So if I understand correctly, there's been a problem with managing our VP. Is there anything else I missed? Is that it? Yes. Then you build a solution. So going forward, what do you think we could do that would allow you to get me my report on time? And maybe if you get interrupted by the VP, you can kind of help him as well. So what do you think? And then we get that person to kind of craft the solution if they can. And then if it's amenable, we just say, so will you do that? Can you do that? We gain commitment to that plan. So that's it pretty simply in a nutshell. But if people would internalize that model about how do I initiate, how do I discover, how do I connect, which is really nothing more than summarizing my understanding, and how do I build a solution, it's totally hot because you know how to start, you know where you are, and you know where you're done. So we try to take all the guesswork out of holding those kind of tough conversations for folks.
Well, I love your framework on how to have difficult conversations and how to communicate. And at the same time, we all have these like feelings that come up and they prevent us from being the grown-ups and adulting the way that we know we're capable of communicating, and instead, I don't know, asking for a friend, like, don't always react perfectly when you get triggered. So I'm so encouraged to hear your framework. And is there a way that you can actually learn these skills even though you're an adult and you've been triggered by past events?
If you go buy my book, I guess, or you could reach out if you need some help with a tough conversation. I'm happy to help. And I've written a ton of articles that are up on my website and LinkedIn, but it's, once you learn it, internalize it, it really makes this whole process of giving feedback so much easier. And I think it's something that we all need to learn how to do. In fact, my spouse and I both, we use it at home with our children, which just makes it so much easier because I'm thinking as I'm holding that conversation rather than allowing my emotions to rule the day. And if they're ruling the day, things are not going to go well. That makes sense.
Wow. It makes so much sense. And I want to know, do you have any final words for our audience? We've all been disrupted and we want to restore this connection and communication and rebuild relationships. Any final tips?
I would just say this. You think about everything that people do at work, whether it's sharing a vision or sharing your expectations or giving direction or giving feedback or coaching somebody to improve or resolving conflict, or is there anything that we do at work that doesn't involve communication? I would just say that it's so important for us to recognize that the work we do, both in our personal and professional lives, is really contingent upon us being more effective in the way that we communicate and interact with one another. If people would get more of an awareness about that and just pay attention to what they're doing and saying, maybe they could make course corrections in the moment, on the fly, that would so much improve the interaction so that they could get the results they want. So I would just say, gosh, start being aware of what you're doing and what you're getting. And if what you're getting is not what you want, you got to change what you're doing. It's about that simple.
That is simple, well said. And where can people find your book and you? I know we connected on LinkedIn.
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. My book is on Amazon. It's Overcoming Fake Talk. I own a company called DialogueWorks, so you could go to dialogueworks.com. Find me there. Probably the easiest way is find my profile, John Stoker, on LinkedIn, and just DM me, direct message me if you need some help.
Well, thanks for being a great guest on Disrupted.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for having me.